All right. Hi, everyone. My name is James Kenley. I serve as the Executive Director of the Vail Symposium, and on behalf of Dale Mosier, our Board Chair, and our entire Board of Directors, thank you for being with us, and welcome. The Vail Symposium has been providing thought-provoking, diverse, and affordable programming to the Vail Valley since 1971. We are a nonprofit organization, and ticket sales cover less than 15% of our operating revenue. So donors at all levels are critical to our ability to bring our mission to life in our community. I'd like to thank the organizations and individuals that help make Vail Symposium programs possible. Our presenting sponsors are the Town of Vail and the Frechette Family Foundation. Our event sponsors are Vail Resorts Epic Promise, the Vail Daily, and the Antlers at Vail. The Environmental Awareness Series, which we're in tonight, is underwritten by Holly and Buck Elliott. I'd also like to recognize Manor Vail Lodge for supporting tonight's program and extend our gratitude to the many Lighthouse members in the audience this evening. Your generous support makes a big impact. Can we please give our supporters a round of applause? We are honored to celebrate International Women's Day with our presenter, Paola Gianturco. After graduating from Stanford University, she led an accomplished career in marketing and corporate communications, becoming a principal at the first women-owned advertising agency. In 1995, inspired by the United Nations' 4th World Conference on Women, her calling as a photographer and author, lifting up women and girls, came to life. There really isn't a better voice to hear from on this special day. Her first book, In Her Hands, Craftswomen Changing the World, was published in 2000, followed by 6 more. And if you'll indulge me, I'll read the titles and you'll get a sense of the scale and the scope of her incredibly productive last 20 years. In her 2004 book, Celebrating Women, she documented festivals and ceremonies in 15 countries around the world that honor women. Then in 2006, she commemorated 10 years of time in Guatemala with Viva Colores, a salute to the indomitable people of Guatemala. My Spanish is poor. Women Who Light the Dark came 1 year later, spotlighting women around the world who have overcome poverty, disease, and violence to improve themselves and their communities. In 2012, Paola published Grandmother Power, a global phenomenon, bringing the activist grandmother movement into the public awareness. I think we have some activist grandmothers in the room tonight. A grandmother herself, Paola co-authored Wonder Girls, Changing Our World, with her granddaughter, Alex Sangster. This book documents the work of activist girls in 13 different countries. Together, they earned a Nautilus Book Gold Award in the Social Change, Social Justice category in 2017. Most recently, just in September of last year, Paola collaborated with another granddaughter, Avery Sangster, documenting the work of activist girls in 13 different, wrong paragraph. This is the book we're featuring tonight. She worked with Avery to publish Cool, Women Leaders Reversing Global Warming, the first book to document the work of women climate leaders globally. It's this book that we'll illuminate this evening. We have limited copies for sale up front that she's happy to sign after the program. And as you can imagine from that bibliography, she could present for days. Instead, she's generally allotted substantial time this evening for Q&A and discussion. She wants to hear from you. So following the formal presentation, I'll be back, I'll have a microphone, and I will run around to make sure that everyone has a voice this evening. I'd also like to quickly acknowledge we have some young people in the room tonight. Please get straight to bed when you get home. Please join me in a very warm welcome for the first time to the Vail Symposium, Paola Gianturco.
Happy International Women's Day. I am so happy to be here in this beautiful, beautiful place. And also I'm happy to be here because there are so many women who are involved in this area and sustainability. Starting with the mayor, including Kat, including Chris and Beth, including many more. I suspect that some of you are here tonight, and I hope we'll hear a little bit about you later. But you are not alone. Women all over the world are helping us understand how to live a sustainable future. They are energetic, they are creative, and they are effective. The book we're going to talk about, Cool, Women Leaders Reversing Global Warming, tells the story of 27 of those women leaders in 10 countries. Countries as diverse as Sweden and Sri Lanka. When Avery and I first began talking about doing this book, Avery is my granddaughter, as you heard. She was 11 when we began working on this project. When we began thinking about this book, we realized that many people recognize the problems that climate change creates. Floods, droughts, wildfires, terrible storms, and many more. But people still avoid taking action to solve the climate crises. For a lot of people, climate change is too scientific and complicated to understand. It's too big, they think, for one person to make a difference. It's too political to discuss, or it's too scary. Our dream for the book Cool is that the women's stories will inspire readers to climate action. And in fact, I confess, I hope I will inspire you to more climate action tonight. So what is global warming and how does it work? When you were in the 4th grade, you probably learned about the water cycle. I see heads nodding. Simply put, rain falls and flows into rivers to collect in lakes and oceans, and then the water evaporates to form clouds, which then make rain again. For humans to live, this cycle must be in balance. Too little rain and it's a drought, too much rain and it's a flood. The carbon cycle is similar. Carbon dioxide is actually a good thing. It's necessary for life on Earth. Carbon dioxide is absorbed by plants and later released back into the atmosphere when each plant decomposes. Oceans, lakes, and streams also absorb carbon dioxide. This natural balance between just enough CO2 in the air but not too much lasted for years until we big-brained humans figured out how to release energy by burning coal, gas, and oil. Burning those fossil fuels releases more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere than the environment can absorb. The extra carbon emissions trap the sun's heat, creating global warming. We're all responsible for global warming. This isn't about selfish corporations or evil politicians or powerful lobbyists pushing bad laws. No, we all participate. Think about the vehicle you drive. Think about the lights overhead. The clothes we're wearing, which were probably shipped from around the world. We're all contributing to the CO2 imbalance, even though there are so many important projects here in Vail. I must say I practically cheered yesterday when I saw the first electric bus zoom by. Bravo. But if we continue to live as we are today globally, the Earth will no longer support the life we know. We interviewed one leader who stopped talking mid-sentence and looked at me with an expression of uncertainty. She was talking about the end of our species, and that could sound really scary to 11-year-old Avery. But Avery was not paralyzed by fear. She was inspired by the women whom we interviewed making this book. They're actually making change yesterday, today, and tomorrow. So can you. In a few minutes, I'm going to tell you some of their stories. Decreasing global greenhouse gas emissions that cause global warming will take all of us working together. Policymakers, businesses, nonprofits, academics, and individuals, families. So why focus on women, people ask me. Cool will be my 7th book, as you heard, about women activists around the globe. I tell their stories because women's stories are too often unheard. But this time, there was an additional reason. New research suggests that women are especially effective at improving the environment. And if you look at Foreign Policy magazine's research, you will discover that that's especially true for countries with women in positions of power, companies with women on their boards, women legislators, and investment firms led by women. That means that women's climate action qualifies them as role models for all of us. Avery and I started work on our book with great excitement. We interviewed and photographed in Denmark, for starters. Imagine your company is counting on you to invent sustainably sourced plastics to replace the petroleum-based plastics that they've relied on for 60 years to manufacture what Fortune magazine called the toy of the century. And your company, which has been identified as having the best corporate reputation in the world, has decided to make its products 100% sustainable by 2030. Are you up for it? It's my dream job, says Nelleke Vanderpoel. She's the chemical engineer who is vice president of materials at Lego Corporation. Nelleke admits what I've always loved about chemistry is solving difficult challenges. Doing something good for the planet is important to me. It's great that I can work with a company that delights children and adults across the world. Nelleke says Lego wants to leave the planet in the best possible shape for our kids. Our owners have made this a strategic priority. That is not greenwashing. Nelleke works at Lego's corporate headquarters in Billund, Denmark. Lego's suppliers develop new plastics under her supervision. Nelleke's own lab is the place where new bioplastics are tested for color and shininess and durability, which must be the same as Lego's conventional plastics. In 2018, the company introduced a new Lego set called Plants from Plants. It was made from sugar cane-based plastics, sugar cubes. The set, which included trees and shrubs, was called Plants from Plants, as I said, and it included more than 80 shapes. But Nelleke points out that Lego makes something like 4,000 shapes. We need to invent replacements for more than 20 different kinds of plastic, she told me. When they're ready, we'll substitute them into our sets, and you won't be able to tell the difference. The suppliers who develop new bioplastics with Lego own the formulas and the patents, so they can license them to manufacturers of other kinds of products. Nelleke told us that by changing our behavior, we enable our suppliers' other customers to take advantage of our efforts. And then she smiled. You're about to meet an Inuit leader, Sheila Watt Cloutier, who was president of Canada's Circumpolar Council. She also led the council's international work in Alaska, Russia, Canada, and Greenland. She earned so many awards for her work that the list of awards takes up 3 full Wikipedia pages, and she's featured on a Canadian postage stamp. Climate change is causing the Arctic to warm twice as fast as the rest of the planet. New research, in fact, says, you may have read it too, that some parts of the Arctic are warming 5 to 7 times as fast. The permafrost is melting, so buildings buckle in Sheila's village in northern Quebec province. Houses sink, runways crack, the coast is eroding, snowmobiles have fallen through the ice. The impacts are not merely physical, they are cultural. Hunting is a cornerstone of the Inuit culture, but the animals and marine mammals that the Inuit hunt for food and clothing are also struggling. Snow and ice represent mobility, Sheila says. Sheila grew up traveling by dog sled. When mobility starts to go, everything becomes precarious. We are the sentinels, she continues. We live at the top of the world, so we're the first to witness the changes that are happening all over our planet. We are scientists in our own right, she says. We know about animals, migration, the land, the changes that are happening. Western scientists say they have learned from our hunters. The marriage of their science and our traditional knowledge has been groundbreaking. Indigenous wisdom is the medicine we seek to create a sustainable world. Inuit people believe that the world is interrelated, interconnected, and interdependent. In her book, Sheila writes, our shared atmospheres and oceans, not to mention our human spirit, connect us all. It's important that climate change is not framed as an economic, scientific, or political issue only. It's a human issue. She's actually the first one I know of who cast climate change as a human rights issue. Sheila continues, I urge people to move from their heads to their hearts, where all change happens, to know that change provides an opportunity to flourish in the future and to create a better world. But we need to act. Mother Earth is a living, breathing entity, Sheila says. When you're out in nature, you can sense that Mother Earth is reaching her limits. A story from Tanzania. Just outside the city of Arusha, Avery and her family picked up Juliet Molel, a Maasai woman they were going to visit. Juliet had taken a 2-hour boda, that's a motorcycle taxi, to come help them find her house in the village of Old Joro because there were no roads names, road signs, or house numbers most of the way, and in fact there was no road most of the way. At first the road was bumpy with chunks of rock, then it was unpaved and rutted, and then the road ended, but they kept going. They were about to discover why the NGO Solar Sister works with last mile communities where people use kerosene and candles, flashlights, or wood fires to light their homes. Fatmo Muzo, Solar Sisters Tanzania country director, understands what life is like for these women and these communities. Without light, she says, there is no access to quality education or health care. In my home village, there is no electricity, but now people are happy they have solar. Solar Sisters' most popular product in Tanzania is a portable table lamp that runs off a solar panel. Solar Sister entrepreneurs also sell telephone chargers, lighting systems, and clean cook stoves, which operate on a solar charger that can be installed outside or on the roof. Fatma says, what I am proudest of is Solar Sisters' unique model. Few organizations here work with women, and even fewer work with women and energy. Many village women don't have other sources of income. If they have a seasonal crop business, it takes a long time for to wait to harvest and sell. But if they sell solar, they can earn money every day. Fatma mentions we did a survey to measure Solar Sisters' impact, and it showed that our women are being respected and making family decisions. They have the same strong voices as their husbands, and many have become village leaders because they are confident and empowered. Now a story from Sri Lanka. Scientists say that mangrove trees sequester 5 times more carbon dioxide than typical tropical trees like those in the Amazon rainforest. Mangroves not only absorb carbon dioxide, but they bury it in the soil. A nonprofit called Sudisa includes every woman in every village on the periphery of the island. The women-led community cooperatives include 15,000 women. Each woman is, at all times, growing 100 mangrove seedlings in her backyard. Every year they sow 1.5 million seedlings in Sri Lanka's coastal lagoons. Members of the co-op also monitor the mangrove forests and report people like shrimp farmers who try to cut the trees down. The women's voices carry weight. Officials respond immediately. One morning, 3 groups of women from the village of Mundell gathered to plant mangrove trees. They arrived at the lagoon by boat and bicycle and motorcycle. There were Muslims, Tamil, and Sinhalese, but despite their differences, their commitment to the mangroves unites them. Wearing bright clothes but barefooted, they embedded seedlings in the dark silt at the water's edge. Then they rinsed their hands and feet, rolled out straw mats, opened thermoses, and served us ginger tea in china cups. One more story. As a child, Clover Moore was the leader of a group she called the Scarlet Pimpernels of Neptune. The Scarlet Pimpernels of Neptune. She guided her schoolmates on walks in a nearby national park. Now, Lord Mayor Clover Moore leads one of the world's largest cities, Sydney, Australia. She is the first woman elected Lord Mayor and the longest-serving mayor in the city's 179-year history. As a child, the mayor-to-be showed 2 qualities that have served Sydney residents well. One, an ability to convince people to follow her lead. And second, a passion for her natural surroundings that inspired her as a child to give her parents trees as birthday presents. When Clover and her husband moved to Sydney suburb in the 1970s, she recalls that the neighborhood park was a dust-filled concrete slab. Sydney refused to lay grass because they said it would be too difficult to sweep up broken glass. She decided to deal with that. With no political experience or allies, she ran for the local council in 1980, and she won. And that led to a whole series of political jobs. After I was elected mayor in 2004, she discovered that 97% of the Sydney residents wanted action on climate change. So we committed, she told me, to reducing emissions in the local government by 70% before 2030. 70% before 2030. This was in 2004. We have planted more than 13,000 trees. We've installed more than 4,000 solar panels across our properties, changing streetlights to LED bulbs. We've expanded public transportation. We've upgraded the city's fleet to hybrid and electric vehicles, and we added bike lanes, some of the ways, only some of the ways that we've addressed climate change, and they're proving effective, she said. We were Australia's first local government to be certified carbon neutral. That certification happened in 2011. Now, I can't help noticing, maybe you have too, that 2011 is a long time from 2030. The city of Sydney belongs to C40 Cities, a group that shares knowledge and acts together to address the climate crisis. The Lord Mayor says, without urgent, coordinated global action, we face a high risk of runaway climate change. Clover Moore, the girl who gave her parents trees as birthday gifts, now shows the world's cities how to prevent runaway climate change. Every chapter of the book ends with ideas that the leaders suggest readers can do to fight global warming. Each list of ideas is connected via QR code to the book website, which gives details about exactly how to act on those suggestions. You can also access the leaders' ideas by going to the project website, which is cool, reversing-global-warming.com. Click on the ACT tab, and you'll see all the women's ideas for climate action. An overriding observation that Avery and I made is that all of the leaders in the book were using multiple strategies. Think about Clover Moore in Sydney. She was changing LED bulbs, she was adding bike lanes, she was increasing the use of public transportation, and so forth. Inspired by the women leaders' multiple strategies, Avery and I created a climate action plan for our book. We offset our airline miles by donating trees to EarthDay.org's Canopy Project. We ask our publisher to print Cool with linseed oil ink and paper certified by the Forest Stewardship Council, which is sustainably produced, and they did. Avery made our business cards, and she had them printed on moo.com from paper made exclusively from recycled t-shirts. We have arranged to have a tree planted for every book that is bought. And last, 100% of our author royalties will go to the Women's Earth Alliance to provide seed funding to women around the world who are starting businesses and nonprofits that will help reverse global warming. I'm telling you about our climate action plan because I hope you will call a family meeting to create your own family climate action plan with multiple strategies. A Washington Post study last year found that 57% of young people in the US are afraid about climate change. That probably includes your children and grandchildren. Fear that is converted to conviction is unstoppable. And there is plenty for all ages to do. Young children can plant trees from seed. Older children can ask their school cafeteria to serve more plant-based meals. Parents and grandparents might install solar panels or buy an electric car next time, or check out induction stoves or heat pumps. If you're an investor, you can vote your shares to support corporate climate action. Nonprofits such as You Sow and Ceres, C-E-R-E-S, which works, I think, with Vail Resorts, can help you vote your proxies. Everyone can vote to use their voice, vote, and money to support local, state, and federal elected officials who will reduce carbon emissions. What you can do right now, each of you will find a cool action pack on your seat. Please take it home with you. We invited women in these organizations in the book to contribute items that would help you act immediately. You'll find a guide to climate conversations from the Climate Museum in New York. There's a nap time postcard you can write to elected officials while your child is taking a nap. That comes from the Mom's Clean Air Force. We added vegetable seeds. If you get broccoli, you can change it with your neighbor if you really want tomatoes. Everything in the action pack is a simple step that you can take easily. You will each then qualify as climate activists. Obviously, this is not enough, but it's a start. Action begets action. If we act, we'll inspire others to act, and they will inspire others. We can scale up and create critical mass. Saving our species is an existential challenge that will take all of us working together. Governments, businesses, and families, Avery and I look forward to the existential impact that you and we together will create. I asked for an especially long discussion period after my talk. My hope is that some of the women in this room who lead climate action here in Vail will use this as an opportunity to make a statement, add a message, or make an announcement. Give us an update. I hope to salute and celebrate you. Your voices deserve to be heard today. Everyone else, share a question, share opinions, share feelings, share your actions. The floor is open, and you want to talk a little bit about how to do it.
How about Paola Gianturco? As she said, we're really hoping for a robust discussion here. I'm going to turn this off. And just a couple pieces of etiquette. This microphone is tied into our recording and also helps amplify sound up here on stage. So when you share your story, when you ask your question, please speak directly into the microphone, not over the top of the microphone or at the microphone from a distance, because it doesn't do what it was designed to do when you do that. Also, if you're able, I would invite you to please stand while you share your story, your context, or ask your question. And I would love to hear from you. Who wants to start us off? Kat, I saw your hand first.
Well, my first act of climate action tonight was buying Cool, and I hope many of you do. And if they run out of books, I heard Paola say that you could still buy them. So, commercial out of the way. Earlier tonight, I shared some people my T-shirt from the Great March for Climate Action in 2014. I walked across the country in those cities, alerting people to what was happening with climate then. And we have TEDx Vail coming up with a couple of climate solution related events. And let's see, I connect climate dots between Alaska and Colorado and Hawaii. And I'm curious, what is the most surprising place that you have visited in writing all of your 7 books?
The most surprising?
Yeah.
I'll tell you the most surprising thing I learned doing the book, and then I'll talk about the place that I found most surprising. The most surprising thing I discovered was that Avery was a huge help as a collaborator. If you don't have an opportunity yet to hang out with a 12-year-old girl, do it, do it, do it. I'll give you an example. At the end of our first interview, I, having worked out with her something like 60 questions, she said, "Grandmother, I have an idea." And I said, "What's your idea?" And she said, "I think we should pick the 6 most important things and put them at the top of the interview, and I'll be the timekeeper, and every 10 minutes, if the woman talks longer, we will go on to the next question at the end of an hour." These are busy women leaders. "We will at least have the 6 most important questions. If we have more time, we'll ask more questions." Now, this was absolutely antithetical to my experience interviewing people for 6 other books. I can't tell you how hard it was for me to keep from saying, "That won't work." But I didn't. I said, "Okay, let's try." And she was absolutely right. So Avery was a big surprise. The most surprising place. Oh, there were many. One was in Sweden. They had built a mall adjacent to their recycling center. And they had hired a woman who had previously managed a traditional mall and had managed a museum. And it was her intention to make available to people who wanted to run shops in this recycling center mall all of the things that were recycled. And they would upscale them and then resell them. She said, these things are all new to you. You don't always have to buy new things. And sure enough, she had an upcycled bicycle shop and an upcycled furniture shop and an upcycled florist shop in which the florist had found leather jackets in the recycled bin and had covered them with fabulous leathers. They sell for $150. So that was a real surprise. I had not seen that anyplace else. They told me that CNN had been there right before I arrived. So this is something which is gaining attention, but it surprised me. It was a surprise to see Greta Thunberg kick off her climate strikes while we were beginning to do the book. We started our work in 2017. In 2018, she first sat on the steps of the parliament in Sweden and refused to go to school on Friday. And of course, that inspired kids all over the world to do climate strikes on Friday. And because that was happening as we worked, it was a big surprise. And we photographed them in Denmark, we photographed them in New York, where they occupy a bench outside the UN every week. We went with them for a die-in front of Fox News. And we photographed them in Los Angeles and in Northern California. So that was a big surprise. It surprised us virtually as it was going on. So those are a couple of examples. I'll have to tell you, I did probably a year's worth of research to decide which women should be in the book. But as you can tell, there was no way I could capture all of it, much as I would like to have.
Thank you for your presentation. Where in the United States do you think the best forward motion is taking place with regard to implementing a lot of these processes and changes that we need to effect?
I'm not sure that I can answer that well. It may well be that the best things are happening here in Vail. I'm just beginning to learn about what you all have underway. I interviewed a woman at Grid Alternatives in Oakland, California. And she is working on solar, which through what she describes as financial jujitsu, she's using government funds and donor funds and making solar available to low-income families for free. They then teach the members of these low-income families to install solar not only on their own houses, but on aunts and uncles and cousins and so forth. And it inevitably is a big party. They bring food from their own ethnic backgrounds. She said, I learned how to make papusas. And she is doing such a good job locally that she's also working on long-distance solar installations. So if you live in an apartment house, not in a house, you can access solar in community solar farms. And they are now working outside of the U.S. in Mexico and Nepal, and I think maybe Nigeria. So what's happening is they're expanding, and they're also working on the Navajo lands, where, as you heard me talking about in Tanzania, they didn't have access to solar and hence didn't have access to education or healthcare. So although it's tempting to discover where something is happening in an individual location, what I saw is that doing well locally inevitably is a step to go further. And I hope that happens to some of your programs here, and it may already have.
So recently there was a hike this summer called Climate for Climate, and you could hike up Vail, and you had a bunch of fun activities at the top, and I think some of the profits went to climate, and it was really cool. My question is, what is the thing that we can do in our everyday lives that could help climate change slow down?
I bet you have answers to your own question. I would love it. I'll tell you what I'm thinking about, and you can tell me what you're thinking about. Is that a deal? One thing that occurs to me is food. Something like 1/3 of all the food that is purchased worldwide is trashed and not eaten. That constitutes somewhere between 6 or 8% of the carbon emissions, but I have read as high as 25%, so I'm not sure what that percentage actually is, but it's well worth turning around. One of the organizations in the book is called 1 Million Women. And the woman who founded it was determined to have 1 million women all over the world join up. She has an app. The app gives 12 different ideas of what you can do to fight climate change. Many of them have to do with food, such as, for example, put a box in your refrigerator that says, eat these first, on things that are approaching their sell-by date. Another organization that's in the book is called Feedback. Feedback is also working on food issues. They began gleaning with volunteers, picking up out of the fields all of those supposedly ugly vegetables, and hiring the best chef around to cook meals for, get this, 5,000 people. So they've had huge dinners made with supposedly not acceptable vegetables in places as far-flung as Berlin and Bogota and Beijing. It's very important to them to get the word out, and they're doing a brilliant job of it. And the third one that is working on food issues is an organization in Hong Kong called Some Mondays. I'll tell you later what the name of that is. In fact, I can tell you right now. They have organized a restaurant, Green Monday. How could I forget? Green Monday. They have organized a restaurant in Hong Kong. Hong Kong people eat more meat than any other city in the world. And as you know, terrible what? Yeah, it is surprising. So they have taken on a very difficult task. And Green Monday's idea is that if you commit to eat a non-meat meal, including no fish, no chicken, no red meat, 1 day a week, Monday, that you will have started on the way to a more healthy diet. So they have a restaurant, they have classes, cooking classes, they have a grocery store where you can buy the ingredients that you need. And little by little, they are beginning to educate people. I think now something like maybe 5% of all of the people in Hong Kong are eating at least one non-meat meal a week, which is a huge shift. So that would be my answer to your question about what can we think about to start with? Tell me if you have another idea or if you like that one.
Yeah, those are all really cool ideas. And at my school, we have a class called Humane Ed, where we think about a very big problem and a humane way to solve it. And a lot of kids chose climate change related issues, including like car pollution, how we harvest foods and t-shirt material. It was really cool.
Sounds cool. Thanks.
Well, Emma is definitely our future. We loved having her at Climate for Climate, and her dad, James Kenley, was really the lead organizer of that event. I work for something called Walking Mountains Science Center, and we were founded by a female, Kim Lingmaid, 25 years ago, who's now the mayor of the town of Vail. And I'd say the most recent activities that are really relevant to this discussion, everything we do is about inspiring environmental sustainability and stewardship through natural science education. So we have we're the hub of the wheel of a big initiative, you may have heard of it, called the Climate Action Collaborative. And I encourage you all to go on our website, walkingmountains.org, and look under sustainability. But this is a major effort initiative here in Eagle County. We're looking to reduce carbon emissions, James would know, about 50% by 2030. And we working across all different sectors, business, government, transportation, buildings. It's an incredible initiative. We also are hosting a climate speaker series, and we have a talk tomorrow night at Colorado Mountain College, thanks to Diana and her colleagues. And we'll be featuring Will Toor, T-O-O-R, who is kind of the energy czar for the governor here in the state of Colorado. Just last night, we had our sustainable film series, and it was all about water issues and some particular methods that Los Angeles has incorporated to try and really improve the water situation and the seriousness of that issue in California. So we are active all the time, every day, and we'd love to have all of you, men and women, involved.
Thank you. I salute you.
I'm so glad you came tonight, Patty. Who else? All right. I'm coming.
Hello, my name is Gary, and very interesting discussion, but what I'd like to know, I have a question. If you had to pick one thing in the world or one activity that would have the most influence on climate change, what would you pick?
I would actually be really interested to hear what you in the audience think about that, and have you give some of your answers, and then I will chip in mine. What do you think?
Vote.
Vote.
Stop driving.
Stop driving was that last one. Who else? I'm fit, I'm nimble, I'm ready. Who else has a thought on this one?
The corollary to vote is pieces of legislation that might push things in the right direction.
Kat?
Women, run for office.
Okay, Paola, what do you think?
I agree. I think that until we have policymakers who are prepared to tackle these issues with policy changes, in fact, it's going to be very hard to get to the goals that have been set by 2030. And I think this country at the moment is in a terrible pickle politically. I think electing women would be a fine idea, although not all women are going to take this action either, much as I wish that were the case. However, I think taking as much action as we can Clover Moore, for example, in her list of 3 things she hoped readers would do, said, never ever stop asking your elected officials to take action on climate. If you find that in the book and scan the QR code, it will take you to the website, and that's where the specifics are listed about how to do that. And the first thing it will say is how to find out who your elected officials are and how to reach them both via email and by phone. The second is you will find a sample email that you might send about climate. Third, you will find an outline of a telephone conversation that you might have with someone's assistants or with your elected officials. And last, if you are really into activism and want to sign up for Al Gore's training program, it will help you do that. So these are the specifics that we have to look at. Having said voting is crucially important, I am absolutely with all of you who thought that. We then have to break it down into the doables, because it takes time.
I'm sure you've had, in many years, you run into people, I call them climate change deniers. How do you deal with them? In 2 or 3 sentences.
I don't. In 2 words. I think climate change deniers are in fact beyond the possibility of convincing. They simply are responding so emotionally and irrationally that to move them into the camp even of climate change is real, but it's not urgent. You would think that might be the next step. I have never figured out how to do that. I am focusing on moving people who think climate change is happening and it's urgent, but who simply don't know what they can do. That's, I think, is the first step for me. And usually, actually, I start my talks by asking this question. I just had a sense that this audience was so sophisticated about it that I didn't start there. But I'll ask you, I'll tell you what I'm going to ask, and then I'll ask you to raise your hands. Do you think climate change is not happening? Do you think climate change is happening but it's not urgent? Do you think climate change is happening and it's urgent? Okay, now raise your hands. Climate change is not happening. I was right. Climate change is happening but it's not urgent. Climate change is happening and it's urgent. Everybody, go Vail. Yeah. Climate crisis. Climate crisis.
Right here. Ask kids, what could we do to help climate change?
There are many things that kids can do. Many, many things that kids can do. If you are part of Fridays for Future, you certainly can protest and demonstrate and raise awareness. There's a chapter in the book about 2 students at a high school in Copenhagen. Their school is covered with solar panels all over the walls. Each of the solar panels is tilted slightly, so it captures the sun as it comes from different angles. The school is so sophisticated about climate that they are teaching all of their students to be climate champions. And I interviewed 2 seniors who had just taken their final exams and had decided that they would conduct tours of their schools for architects, so that the architects could come in and they could discover that the schools had the ability to warm the classrooms from the body heat of the students. And they had these amazing solar panels as well, and many other things. Their lockers were made of bamboo. Certainly, cafeterias can serve more plant-based meals. You can demand that. Avery is on the student council in her high school. She's a freshman. And she is responsible for the environment as it relates to the school, to be sure that the school is doing everything it can to reduce its own carbon emissions, and teaches students about what they can do. So let your imagination fly. You can do many, many things, and it's crucial that you do. Tell me what you're doing.
Recycling. Riding my bike everywhere. Like
Riding your bike
practice.
everywhere. I want to jump off from riding your bike everywhere. That's great. There's a chapter in the book about the two women who run an organization called the Cycling Embassy of Denmark. They are acting as consultants, both of them are engineers, acting as consultants to cities all over the world who are trying to rebuild or build their climate infrastructure. And in Denmark, they are, in Copenhagen, they are hoping to bring the 50% of the workers who come in from the suburbs every day to be able to ride their bikes in. So they're building a bicycle superhighway. It means that as they go through the traffic lights, the lights change automatically to green so they don't have to stop. They are acting as consultants now to cities literally all over the world, and helping them learn about how to be bicycling cities. 49% of all of the people who work in Copenhagen ride their bikes to school, even in the snow and ice. And when I was interviewing them, one of these women said to me, you know, bicycling is just normal for us. It's just like most people in the world brush their teeth every morning. You don't even think about it. We don't think of ourselves as bicyclers. We, any more than people think of themselves as teeth brushers. But the fact that you're riding your bike to school is great. It can make a huge difference.
Hi, I'm Chris Cohen. I work at Walking Mountain Science Center with Patty, and I actually run our education programs. This summer, we're running a new program called Envisioning Sustainable Futures, and we're going to take a group of high schoolers on a hut trip and give them not only the skills to solve some climate issues, but also help them to envision a sustainable future. Because in our research, one of our graduate students is running this program. She found that in order to get there and actually put things into action, you have to envision that future. So I ask you, what does that future look like in your mind, given all of the experiences you've had?
Bravo. Thank you.
And Paola, the question at the end there was, can you give some fodder that Chris can bring to that group to help them in the exercise of envisioning their future?
Let me come back to them.
Thanks so much for being here this evening. One thing I wanted to suggest to the kids, one thing you can do is call out your parents when you see them not being climate friendly. Now, my kids are 2 or 3 times your age. But for example, recently my son said, why are you buying wine that's from overseas? Haven't you thought about the fact that it comes over on a ship which is polluting the air? Why don't you buy wine that's produced locally? And then I started thinking, well, then we have cheese and we have so many products. Cars, talk about what can women do. Aren't women the basic consumers of households across America? Couldn't we women, householders, think more carefully about what we're doing? And then lastly, I see Diana Scher here. Isn't CMC taking groups to Bhutan? Do you want to talk about that for a minute?
You're on the spot now.
Thanks, Rebecca. I'll just make it up. Kim Lang-Maid, as all of you know, runs our sustainability program at CMC. So she will be one of the professors this November that takes our second group of students to Bhutan. And you probably know Bhutan is known as the land of happiness, but also incredibly sustainable. So our sustainability students get to see firsthand really what sustainability looks like day to day, and incredibly informational, educational, and I know that the last time we went, which was 2018 or 19, I guess it was 18, they came back so fired up, gave a great presentation, so you can expect the same. So probably about this time next year we'll be doing a presentation of hopefully some of those lessons learned. So thanks.
Isn't it correct that you now offer a degree?
Yes, now we have 2 sustainably, thanks, awesome. Colorado Mountain College. I know, this is great. So for many years we've had our sustainability studies, which is a Bachelor of Arts, so that's very socially minded. But this fall we just started our Ecoscience ESS. Ecosystem Science and Stewardship, thank you, which is a BS. So we're really looking at more towards the science side of things, and we worked very closely with many of the organizations that we all know and love in the state of Colorado that need our help. So the Forest Service, the waterways, anybody that needs to have testing done, or for us to really keep our eyes on how do we keep climate change at bay and what can we do to really protect our environment. So thanks for that commercial airtime.
Thanks so much for spending this evening with us and our community. I actually have some questions about the sustainability of the materials that are going into like the solar panels. Can you discuss a little bit more about those materials?
I want to come back to the question that one of the girls asked, and then let me get to solar panels for a minute. Avery has done some things that you might like to consider doing, and we haven't talked about social media yet. But if you are as effective and at using social media as most kids your age are, you have a kind of access to other kids that puts you in a good position to communicate about climate change and climate action. Avery convinced her then 6th grade buddies to start a website called Gray to Green. And it was full of ideas about the problem and what you can do to solve it. She also mobilized people in her grade school class to go to the cafeteria and convince them not to use plastic straws, not to use plastic implements in the cafeteria. So make a little mental list of the problems that you can see and focus on letting other people know about them and how they can be solved. And if you want answers to that question, how they can be solved, you can certainly go to the cool website, or you can join up with 1 million women in Australia. Their app is very interesting because it has a whole list of things you can do, And it also shows exactly how much carbon emissions you will be saving by doing those things. And they also know, because they have people all over the world opting in on these various actions, they know how many, the whole entity of 1 million women, how much carbon emissions they are saving altogether. So you could join an organization like that. They also send you 12 ideas every day of something that you can do. So it's just a wellspring of inspiration.
And
okay,
solar panels.
I'm not going to be able to talk very much about solar panels, but I can tell you this. The Barefoot College in India trains illiterate women to make solar panels and go back. They're elected by their villages to attend a 6-month course or a 1-year course in making solar panels. They then go back to their villages. They've been elected to install them. The villagers pay the same amount that they have been paying for whatever fuel they've been using to heat and light their houses. Might be kerosene. And the women then maintain the solar panels as well. That program has been underway for maybe 15 years. This year they have just started a special program to have women inventing various other solar implements, including solar lanterns. They believe that they may be the only organization in the world that's using the knowledge of illiterate women to make products. But they told me about sitting around in a circle and the women would say, we need to do a solar lantern with a downlight. We need to have a cell phone charger. We need to have it be shaped like a diamond so that we can hold it this way. And the women then build those lanterns and distribute them both through their own organizations, and now this organization, the Barefoot College, has classes that they are running in 7 different countries around the world. So I can't tell you much about what goes into a solar panel, except to say that there are women making them and selling them and installing them and repairing them.
So I would imagine that most of us here share one thing. We have boilers in our homes for heating our homes. And New York Times recently had an article that was quite interesting because they pointed out that heat pumps have developed to the point where they're now usable in cold climates like this one, and that people in Scandinavia are now using heat pumps. I wonder if you could comment about that, because that's certainly something here that could make a huge difference, because I would imagine all of our houses are heated with gas.
We've switched over to a heat pump in our home and it's working fantastically.
Exactly. My understanding about heat pumps is that they are fantastic. They are still fairly expensive, but they're well worth it, as I understand it. Do you want to comment on that?
No, but it was within the last 2 years that we switched over, and all the water heated in the home is on a timer, but it's working fantastically throughout the house, 3 levels to the house, kitchen, bathroom, showers, laundry. So it's been fantastic and very, very executable here.
We just bought a house here in Vail, just moved here a couple months ago, and it needs all of its boilers replaced. So I've been thinking about that. So I'm glad.
Good timing.
I'm glad to hear this.
These are neighbors helping neighbors here. I love this.
Well, I wasn't going to take the mic next, but Paola, thank you so much. This has been terrific this evening, and I really love the anecdotal storytelling from the points of views. There was a lot of policymakers, there's a lot of nonprofits, there's a lot of activists, but particularly the for-profit businesses I think are very interesting. Those Solar Sisters I think is great, and I have no affiliation with this business, but I think business is where we can make a lot of impact as well. There's a local business here that I just wanted to give a shout out to, even though I'm not a part of it. Fill and Refill in Edwards is a woman-owned business, 2 young daughters in the family, so in terms of impact and exposure and education. And for those of you who do not know or don't shop at Fill and Refill as a business in Riverwalk in Edwards, it is a sustainability business that reduces or eliminates packaging for all of your household product needs. So laundry detergent, dish soap, lotion, shampoos, hand soap, any possible. She buys in bulk a variety of already more green, in varying degrees of green. You bring in your container, pay by weight. So there is one example
Great.
of a local impact business. She's already grown sufficiently enough to have to expand her retail space. And so businesses and opportunities like that can happen all over the place.
Thanks for telling us.
Just a real quick, I know we've got the land trust in the house. I thought I saw a watershed logo somewhere, but I'm so proud of our community and the work we're doing in climate action. It really is incredible. I think we could share stories like that all night. Patty's got a quick one.
Chris just turned around and it reminded me, we haven't heard what you think a vision for some of these students could be when Chris and her team lead the kids at the hut trip. So I don't want to let you off the hook because I'm curious.
I didn't hear that question. Sorry.
All right. So the question is, you've got a lot of experience around the world with incredible people doing great work. What is your vision for a sustainable future?
I support the Paris Agreement that says we will have reduced to net zero by 2050. I'm nervous about 2030 and the idea of halving the amount of emissions by then, because I don't think everybody is up to speed and fully active yet. But my vision is that our children and grandchildren will have unpolluted air and water available, and that the wild swings in weather, floods, droughts, wildfires, and so forth, will even out. I think it'll take a while. I think that may be 100 years. But I certainly think it's better than the alternative.
So to you, you were talking about replacing your boilers and things. Another commercial, I guess, for Walking Mountains, they have a program where they'll do an energy audit of your house. And then they can advise you about what you can do to replace your boilers, what kind of boilers to do, and they're pretty good. I've worked with them a little bit with that. So
that audit also qualifies you for rebates and discounts, so well worth doing.
So just to follow up on a couple different points that people have been making, not loud enough? Okay. I wanted to know what maybe new innovation or technology that you have seen that you think might be something that really could deliver in the future. I just saw a video yesterday about vertical farming, where they're transforming old shipping containers into vertical farming. That's, it takes over a large acreage, and it's all inside with UV light, and it's constantly producing. I just thought that was very interesting, so I wanted to hear any new technologies that you've seen.
Well, I'm very interested to see where new technologies land. There are so many seemingly exciting possibilities, but many of them have such bad downside risks that until we have a chance to see them tested, I can't really be excited about things, for example, that might take carbon dioxide out of the air. I mean, there are terrible ideas, I think, such as let's throw lots of white speckles up there and reflect the sun back out of the atmosphere. I just can't imagine how that is going to work, and there are many sort of harebrained schemes out there. I salute those people for creative thinking. I'm crossing my fingers that more works than I can imagine, but I'm worried about it.
Right.
Harebrained ideas. I was reading about one, but it might make a lot of sense. We have a lot of abandoned oil and gas wells here in the state that, for financial reasons mostly, they were abandoned. And when thinking about different energy solutions, people are also talking about geothermal. So there's this concept of plugging those abandoned wells with the piping and the mechanism to be able to generate geothermal energy. And I think it's an interesting thing. I'm only calling it harebrained only because it's kind of new on the market here in the articles that I'm reading, but I think, it's got some merit, so.
I think, unfortunately, with time, we've got to call it. Ladies and gentlemen, Paola Gianturco.